ओके गाइस, वेलकम टू द लाइव स्ट्रीम। अभी मैं स्टडी कर रहा हूँ, अभी मैं पढ़ाई कर रहा हूँ क्योंकि कल मेरा 6 सेमेस्टर थर्ड पेपर की एग्ज़ाम थी। 6 सेमेस्टर थर्ड पेपर थी, जो हिस्ट्री का मेरा थर्ड पेपर थी, वो उसका एग्ज़ाम अभी मैं प्रिपेयर कर रहा हूँ। इसलिए मैं सोच रहा हूँ कि बहुत दिन से मैंने कुछ भी लाइफ पे नहीं आया, इसलिए मैंने सोच रहा हूँ कि अगर लाइफ आने से तो बढ़िया होगा। इसलिए मैं आ रहा हूँ, मैं आ गया हूँ, मैं आ रहा हूँ नहीं, मैं आ गया लाइफ पे। आप देख सकते हैं मेरे को बिना कपड़े। इट इज़ सो हॉट, बहुत गर्मी है पूरा दिन। आज का शायद टेम्परेचर 35 35 36 ऐसे शायद, नहीं तो 40 आसपास हो सकता है, क्योंकि टेम्परेचर इतना मैं क्या बोलूँ। आज का दिन वैसे भी इतना ज़्यादा धूप नहीं था, देयर इज़ नो सन, पर इतना ह्यूमिडिटी, इतना गर्मी है। मेरे को भी आई कैन बेयर, मेरे को भी बेयर करने नहीं सका। तो आप देख सके या मैं भी पिंपल। ओह माय गॉडनेस। ओके, the transformation continue to resonate within the particular practice and for the inspiration for justice and promise movement for democratic rights and the 1830s and 1840s movements as justice as the benefit of national traditions and transformation tradition for the good painting of child justice of the years of difference relation and also the inspiration to Thomas Mann for the Peter Perry 1830s and 1440s and as chanted was defined by the French Revolution and other world during the Asiological Pantheon Chartier celebrated hero for the French Revolution at anniversary primarily as everyone's contributors and events and the movement fought strong links with later French later French socialism and Republican movement. Rejection of autocracy. The revolution highlighted the stark contrast between the British constitutional monarchy and the autocratic authoritarian state building modernism in France and enforcing away from the primacy of parliamentary monarchy and the parliamentary sovereignty as well as 71 at this point Napoleonic England in Napoleonic Wars. England involved England involvement in the Napoleonic War and England involvement in the Napoleonic War and England involvement in the Napoleonic War and Napoleonic and War and England involvement in Napoleonic and War was characterized as RSCDT arranged by transition from aspiration to leadership. हाँ दोस्तों, अभी मैंने 12 व्यू मिला था यहाँ पे, और आप देख सकते हैं अभी फिर से डिक्रीज हुआ 10 व्यू. So I'm back with another live stream. Don't blink till I make it. Let's go. Napoleonic Wars. England involvement in the Napoleonic NAPOLEO Napoleonic War criticized by a transition from isolation to a leadership role in a united continent front against Napoleon Bonaparte. This era saw significant shift in both military strategy and international diplomacy, primarily guided by figures like Lord Castlereagh and the Duke of Wellington. Under the leadership of Castellera, Castellera Arias and the leadership of Francis Daly Arias, who became Foreign Secretary in 1812 during the height of the struggle. Britain committed to a strategy of organizing and financing. Britain committed to a strategy of organizing and financing abolition of Allied power, to oppose French expansion, subsidies and alliance. Castellar CSDLE RAGS methods involve offering general subsidies first to Russian and then to other Allied powers to sustain a collective military effort. This approach of Britain, away from the more short-sighted and penny-pinching policies previous decades. Britain sought to integrate the concept of Europe better than the following the group of other reactionary powers. The conquest of Vietnam following Napoleon's defeat Castellar following Napoleon defeat Castellar was a primary architect of conquest of Vietnam 1815 instead of keeping his territorial. He was for Britain focused on creating cooperative framework among the great power to maintain long-term European peace. Castellar just like Castellar was a primary architect of the conquest of Vietnam England and Vietnam. Instead of taking Western China to Western Britain, he focused on creating a cooperative framework among the great powers to maintain long-term peace. To maintain national organization. The Napoleonic MOP or LE organization. The Napoleonic era represented an intensification intensification. The Napoleonic era represented an intensification of military trends that began during the War of American Independence. Mass participation in Britain transformed into an armed nation during the 1790s and early 1800s, with a significant increase in the number of citizens serving in the military capacity. Social composition. The rank of the military were not merely drawn from the extremes of society, but included a large percentage of the middling sort, which carried on an upward trajectory. स्वागत है दोस्तों इस लाइव पे. Welcome you in this live stream. Mass participation in Britain transformed into an armed nation during the 1790s and early 80s, leading to a significant increase in the number of citizens serving in the military capacity. Social composition. The ranks of military were not merely drawn. The ranks of military were not merely drawn from the extremes of society, but included a large percentage of the middling sort, which carried on an upward trajectory of civilian participation in warfare. national identity that sustain military effort acted as sustain the military effort acted as a meeting point brings together Englishmen, Scotsmen, Welshmen, and Irishmen to forge a more cohesive sense of British national identity to forge more consistent British national identity. Key figures the Duke of Wellington, known as the Conqueror of Napoleon and Napoleon, the Duke of Wellington, known as the Conqueror of Napoleon, the Duke of Wellington, known as the Conqueror of Napoleon and Napoleon. Wellington's personal prestige was so great that he was later sent to as the Duke of Wellington, known as the Conqueror of Napoleon and Napoleon. Wellington's personal prestige was so great that he was later sent as a diplomat to Russia to secure the backing of Tsar Nicholas. To secure the backing of the USA, and as well as Nicholas I for the British strategic interests. For the British strategic interests. For the British strategic interest and the US's interest, the system established to defeat Napoleon and Napoleon. The Congress was established to defeat Napoleon. The system was established to defeat Napoleon to serve to maintain an order. I suppose revolutionary. I suppose revolutionary movement across Europe to suppress revolutionary movement across Europe to combat the specter of Jacobinism. While the war promoted unity, it also faced strong and consistent unity. While the war promoted unity, it also faced strong and consistent opposition from anti-war campaigns, particularly as the conflict dragged on domestically. The government of Pitt the Younger, during the earlier phase of the war, implemented a plan of error to support the British military, to support the Seekkeen from inspirations in the French Revolution, to support the British Seekkeen from inspirations and from inspirations in the French Revolution and the Revolution. The Methodist movement. They provided sources mentioned in the Methodist movement, primarily in the context of its intersection with major British political events such as the Glorious Revolution and the Chartist movement. Connection of the Revolution 1888. The sources reference the origins of the movements. The sources reference the origins of the movement. The sources are the reference and the sources reference the origins of the movement. The sources reference the origin of the movement found out through his father, Samuel Wellesley, during the reign of James II, when King issued his second Declaration of Indulgence. And King issued his second Declaration of Indulgence and order over the equality in the churches. Samuel Wellesley was among those who refused. He famously preached a sermon on a text from the book of Daniel, asserting, "Be it known unto thee, O King, that we will not serve thy gods, nor worship thy golden image, and that has set our influence on Chartism." In the 19th century, Methodists were active and popular Protestant reform movement. A notable figure mentioned is Joseph Reiner Stephen, who was establishing Stephen, described as a fiery Methodist and engaged with the Assumption preacher, was sympathetic as YMP at he was a sympathetic to Chartism. The knife and fork questions. Stephen is famous for declaring in 1838 that that the church's demand for universal suffrage was essential enough and for Christian, social, and also political. And this perspective suggested that political right, like the vote, were not just abstract ideals but practical tools meant to improve the working class, meant to improve the working class standard of living and address poverty and meant to include the meant to include means meant to improve the working class standard of living and address standard of living and address poverty standard of living and address poverty standard of living and address poverty and exploitation standard of living and address poverty and exploitation exploitation and exploitation. While the sources provide specific historical snapshots of Methodist involvement in, in historical snapshot of Methodist involvement in resistance and reform. They do not offer a comprehensive history of the movement into institutional development. Where the sixth point of the charter, a proposed charter which served as the foundational document for the church's movement in the 1830s and 1840s, is the most famously is rated with six specific political demands aimed at creating a more representative and accountable government. According to those sources, the 6 points of the People Charter were universal manhood suffrage, granting the right to vote to all men over the age of 21, the secret ballot, moving away from open voting to prevent voters from being intimidated, moving away from open voting to prevent voters from being intimidated or bribed at equal electoral district, ensuring parliamentary constituencies were the same size as they were verified and not significant at that time. No property qualification for MPs, removing the requirement that individuals must own property to stand for parliament, which prevent working class men from becoming representatives. Payment of member of parliament, providing MPs with salary, providing MPs with right to enable working men to leave their jobs, providing MP with a salary to enable the working men to leave their jobs and serve in government, annual parliaments, requirement general elections to be held every year instead of every 7 annual parliament to be held, requiring general election to be held every year instead of every 7, to make representatives more accountable to their constitution, to make representatives more accountable to their constitution, to make representatives more accountable to their constitution, to make representatives more accountable to their constituents. Historical amounts and variations. While these 6 points are the standard definition of the Charter, the source provides additional context regarding the evolution of this demand. Regarding the evolution of these demands, the original 1838 document, when first drafted by the London Working Men Association, LWMA, in 1938, the document actually contained 9 points. The core 6 plus 3 others related to the reform of election procedures, petition, petitional variations. Support for the charter was expressed. SPR University was expressed. Support charter through the mass petitions and parliament by the Testimony of a simple process from the 1839 petition only contained 5 points, with the 1842 petitions expanded to 8 points that aided demands such as the repeal of the agreement with Ireland. Only 1840 petition called for all such original points to simultaneously simultaneously as the only simultaneously. Although the Jewish movement did not succeed in implementing these bonds at the time, five of the six were eventually conceived by the British elite in later decades with only a demand for annual parliaments. A demand for annual parliaments, demand for the parliaments remaining unfulfilled. Industrial revolution causes and effects. The sources describe industrial revolution as a transformative period that fundamentally reshaped social structures, economic relations, and international dynamics, particularly in Britain and the United States and Japan. While the sources do not provide comprehensive course, pose and process and facility. The sources describe industrial revolution transformative period that fundamentally reshaped the social structures, economic relations, and international dynamics, particularly in Britain, United States, and Japan. Process and facilitating factors. While the sources do not provide comprehensive list of the original process of the British Industrial Revolution, they highlight facts that facilitated its expansion and its adoption in other nations. Technological exchange. Japan's rapid industrialization and the USDRIL. Japan's rapid industrialization was spurred by Japanese students educated in Britain who brought back at once knowledge in science, engineering, and medicine, specifically in fields like fluid and thermodynamics. Capital investment. Significant foreign investment played a role. For instance, British investors and investors showed keen interest in Japanese bonds to fund industrial expansion. Economic development following the 1688 revolution. A shift occurred from mercantilists, anti-aliasing view to an understanding of Britain as a commercial society where wealth could be expanded through human endeavor and financial institutions like the Bank of England and the financial institutions like the Bank of England and the financial INSTA and the financial institutions like the Bank of England. Economics effect. Export opportunities, rapid industrialization, and USDRILI in economics. Export opportunities, rapid industrialization. In emerging powers like Japan created significant export opportunities for British shipyards and arms manufacturers. Shift in government. Changes in the year 2020, world trade dominance shifted from the Dutch Republic to Great Britain. It became a furthest industrialized, and the USDRIL became the world's industrialized power. Economic distress and unemployment. In the early 19th century, the combination of in the early 19th century, the combination in the early 19th century, the combination of the Industrial Revolution and the Napoleonic and the Napoleonic 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 wars resulted in economic distress and widespread unemployment. Immigration. They escaped poverty to find employment. Many Englishmen immigrated to their colonies, influencing a more liberal colonial policy, social and political effects. Conflicts between capital and labor evolution created a profound sense of conflict between capital and labor, led with radical style, the tyranny of capital, characterized by the exploitation of and alienation by the exploitation and alienation of working classes, rise of radical movement. The poverty exploitation suffered by the masses served as a primary driver of the charities movement, which sought political form as a means to improve the working class standards of living, and of focus on escalation of class conflict in the United States. The entry into the Industrial Revolution in the United States, the entry into the Industrial Revolution during the 1830s and 1840s led to a severe escalation of class conflicts, particularly as industrial capitalism with IT and rising progress, particularly as industrial revolution, particularly as industrial and the USDRI, particularly as industrial capitalism interested contributed to the growth of cities. For example, Osaka became known as the Manchester of Japan in the US. Different regional economic interests fueled sectionalism, a major contribution of the Civil War. Military and global impact. Industrial warfare period. So emergency of industrial warfare, where industrial capacity became a central component of military power. In the light year military power, naval and race industrialized nations engage with industrialized nations emerged industrial warfare, where industrial capacity became a central component of military power. Naval armed races industrialized and industrialized nations engaged in intense competition. Germans engaged in intense competition such as the Anglo-German naval armed race, which was effective into World War I. As Anglo-German naval armed race, which was effective into the World War I. Factors behind the occurrence of the Industrial Revolution in England. The occurrence of the Industrial Revolution in England was driven by a combination of a foundational political shift, financial innovations, and a fundamental change in economics ideology that emerged in the late 17th and early 18th centuries. The following factors are identified in the sources as critical to this development. The revolutionary settlement of 1618. The revolutionary the Glorious Revolution was a primary catalyst for industrialization and the USDRI industrialization in the SDRIALIJATI because it transformed the state's ideology and political economy by establishing parliamentary PRLIA and the sovereign by establishing parliamentary sovereignty of Saudi Arabia and ending moves towards absolute monarchy and ending move towards absolute monarchy. The settlement provided a stable environment where commercial interests could influence national policy. Historians note that the revolution moved Arabia moved England away from the mercantilist assumption that wealth was finite and only obtainable. Wealth was finite and only obtainable and obtainable through land conquest, paving the way for a society that valued wealth creation through industry and trade, financial infrastructure and credit. The late 17th century saw the financial infrastructure. The late 17th century saw the financial revolution that provided the necessary capital for industrial expansion. Provided the necessary capital for the industrial expansion. The Bank of England, founded in 1694 following the revolutionary settlement. The Bank of England, founded in 1694 following the revolutionary following the revolutionary settlement settlement in following the revolutionary settlement, and it provided a stable institutional and stability framework for nationwide and national framework for national finance. Credit currency. England developed the first widely circulating credit currency in England developed the first England developed Europe first widely England developed Europe first widely circulating credit currency. England developed first Europe first credit. Shut. Yeah, yeah. The Bank of England, founded in 1694 following the revolutionary settlement, it provides a stable institutional framework. For national finance. Credit currency. England, England. euro first widely circulated. England developed credit currency. England developed euro first currency. England developed euro first currency. England developed a very outdated euro first widely circulating credit currency. England developed Europe's first widely circulating credit currency, which facilitated large-scale investment and trade. The age of projector. This era was defined by a search and entrepreneur. This era was defined in search of NTEPRE entrepreneur. This era was search defined. This era was search defined. This era was defined by a search of entrepreneur. This era was defined by a search of entrepreneur. This era was defined by a search of ENTREPRE. This era was defined by a search of This era was defined by a search of entrepreneur. Entrepreneur, entrepreneur activity and speculative investment. Speculative investment in new technologies and commercial ventures, and activity and speculative investment in new technologies and commercial ventures. New technologies and commercial ventures. Shift to commercial ventures. After 1689, Britain transitioned from primarily agrarian society to a commercial society. This shift was supported by a weak political dominance. The Whig Party, which held power for much of early 18th century, actively promoted commercial industrial development, seeing France as a dangerous competitor. In this sphere, seeing France as a commercial industry, seeing France as a competitor in this sphere. Yes, seeing France as a competitors in this sphere. Seeing France as a dangerous competitor in this sphere. Seeing France as a dangerous competitors in this sphere. Seeing France as a dangerous competitor to the idea of industries. Infinite world theory. The belief later mostly advocated by Adam Smith, then world was created by human endeavor. And therefore potentially infinite, replace other view as fixed resources. Scientists and technological advances. The sources indicate that industrialization was furthered by advances in science. The sources indicated that industrialization was furthered. These sources indicated that industrialization was furthered. Resources indicated that industrialization was furthered by advances in science, engineering, and medicine. Science, science, engineering, engineering, and medicine, especially breakthroughs in fluids, breakthroughs in fluids and thermodynamics were essentially technological innovation that powered their revolution. Scientific principles were often shared through international exchange, such as those with Japanese students who later brought British industrial knowledge to Japan. Global trade and maritime security. Between 1688 and 1720, world trade dominance. Between 1688 and 1720, world trade dominance shifted from Dutch Republic to Great Britain. Between the age of 16, 18, and 17, 20. Between the age of 16 and 17, 16, 18 to 16, 17, between the age of 16, 18 to 17, 20, 16, 18 to 17, 20, 16, 18 to 17, 20, World Trade dominance shifted from the Dutch Republic. World Trade dominance to INS and shifted. World Trade dominance shifted from the Dutch Republic to a great from the Dutch Republic to Great Britain. From Dutch Republic individualized to Great Britain. Britain became a preeminent independent global maritime. And Britain became a preeminent global. Britain became the preeminent global maritime power. Britain became the preeminent global maritime power, which provided a vast export market for its manufactured goods and secured raw materials needs for industrial growth. These blockers turned Britain into the wealthiest industrialized power by the turn of the 20th century. Reform Act of 1832. The Reform Act of 1832, also known as the First Reform Act, was a landmark piece of legislation passed on 7 June 1832. Reform Act of 1832 was known as the First Reform Act, landmark piece of legislation passed in Washington Peace landmark piece of legislation passed on 7 June 1832, which fundamentally altered the British electoral system and shifted the balance of political power, while the Glorious Revolution (Glorious Revolution of 1688) had established parliamentary parliamentary sovereignty as the system had remained an organized oligarchy. The system had remained an The system had remained an organized oligarchy The system had an organized oligarchy of aristocrats. Aristocrats, where elections were often controlled by the landlords. Organized oligarchy of which aristocrats were elections were often controlled by rich and wealthy landlords through bribery and patronage. Key provisions and changes. The Act is described resources as described in the sources as a 3.8 measure involving disfranchisement, enfranchisement and redistribution, defranchisement and disfranchisement and distribution, abolition of return on the Act. The Act disenfranchised. The Act disenfranchised unions. The Act disenfranchised. The Act disenfranchised. The Act 56 small boroughs, 56 small borough with fewer than 2,000 inhabitants, which have returned 100 other members to parliament despite having few or no residents. Reduction of representation. Another 32 boroughs are usually areas with population between 2,000 and 4,000 were reduced from returning between 2,000 to 4,000 were reduced between 2,000 and 4,000 were reduced from returning early. TRN9 returning 2 members to returning only 1. From the 6 made vacant by these changes were redistributed. DISTRIB redistributed. DISTRIB to the growing industrial and industrial towns and more populous POPUL areas and more populous continuous. More populous families that had previously lacked adequate representation. Uniformity of franchise. The Act sought to replace the chaotic and non-uniform voting. The Act sought to replace a chaotic and non-uniformity voting requirement that had existed since 1430, with more standardized qualification, more estimate the RTIs and qualifications, immediate impact and limitation. The Reform Act marked significant transition in British governance, but its scope was limited. A government of the middle class, the successful transfer political influence from the land to aristocracy.